My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. I'm Tara Sands, and today I am sadly not joined by my co-host Steve Yurko. There were some scheduling things that happened, nobody's fault, just weirdness, and so I am flying solo today, which scares me a little. I'm very dependent on Steve and his knowledge, but we're going to have a great interview for you. Our guest today is Brian Lacey, who worked in a totally different department than anyone else we've spoken to so far, in international sales. So I'm so excited to hear his take on things and about his time at 4Kids. And I am just going to be talking to myself today since Steve is not here, which feels really weird. Also, if I sound different, it's because there was some construction going on in the building I live in, and most of the hammering was being done right by where my studio is. So I am in a different room on a different mic and not in a real studio, out of my comfort zone. I feel weird. So apologies if I sound strange for this interview, but we're going to make the best of it. There's an airplane. See, I wouldn't have heard that in my studio, but we get the ambiance of Los Angeles here because of where I'm sitting today. And on a USB mic instead of my normal one. I'm having a day, you guys. But how are you? Oh, good. I'm glad. Oh, no, that's too bad. See, I can host this show by myself. I just will respond to you guys who are talking, hopefully, back at me. Okay, I won't belabor this. If you are enjoying this show and you want to get episodes a week early and ad-free, you can just go to patreon.com. Patreon, I guess I should spell Patreon. I don't usually do that. Patreon. .com/4kidsflashback with the number 4. Or you can wait and hear the show a week later. But if you do join Patreon, we have a lot of great perks, like a Discord channel where the people in the chat just know so much and share so much cool stuff. Also on the site, we share some scripts and we have watch parties and do all kinds of things. So please check that out if you are so inclined. Blah, 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 blah. And without further ado, here's Brian Lacey. Our guest today is Brian Lacey. Brian worked in the international department at 4Kids, which is something, being an actor there, that I knew absolutely nothing about. I had no idea there was even an uptown office. I don't think we ever crossed paths. I am going to let him explain all of this to you guys because I will butcher it. But welcome to the show, Brian Lacey.
Thank you very much, Tara. Actually, my relationship with 4Kids started as a consultant. I have my own company, Lacey Entertainment.
Okay. Oh, right. Of course. Yeah.
And I began consulting with 4Kids with international distribution of their programming. And I did that for a number of years. And actually, I took Pokémon out under my company banner.
Oh, okay.
And I sold Pokémon, Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh, and a whole bunch of other programs that 4Kids produced right up until about, I would say 2003, 2004, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then they really pressured me to come inside the company. So then I went inside the company for a few years. But essentially, it all started out working as as an international distributor for 4Kids.
Got it. So I'd love to go back a little bit because
Sure.
before 4Kids, you produced a show that looks fantastic to me. What was World's Dumbest Criminals? Was that the name of it? America's Dumbest Criminals, which is not children's entertainment. So we'll talk about that shift. But how did you get involved in international distribution in general? As a toddler, did you think, I want to do?
No, not at all. Frankly, I mean, what happened was I had my own sort of consulting, marketing consulting business. It had nothing to do with television whatsoever. And I was involved in a project with a gentleman from St. Louis, Missouri, who his company owned a couple television stations, independent stations, one in St. Louis and one in Sacramento. And they had a small production distribution company happening. And they had a very successful children's program on their hands. And they really, as the owner explained to me, we have a tiger by the tail, and we really don't know how to manage this thing other than the production and domestic distribution. Would you be prepared to come on board and work as the general manager of the company? So I was brought in at the top level. Mm-hmm. The company was called World Events Productions. And at the time, they had an Japanese animated series called Voltron.
Okay.
Voltron, Defender of the Universe. And Voltron was a huge hit in the 1980s. So I came on in January of 1986. And at the time, it was the #1 kid show in syndication. And they were doing very little with it in the international marketplace. And I previously had experience representing companies, projects, properties, et cetera, not entertainment properties, but consumer packaged goods projects, properties in the global marketplace. So I came on board and I was fascinated with the business, and I came on board the World Events and quite quickly moved Voltron out to virtually, certainly every major region in the world. And you got it sold in Australia and Latin America and Europe and all those other countries. And it was a very interesting business for me because, Voltron was actually the first successful Japanese animated series that was reimagined, brought into the United States and made successful. And in fact, it was two different programs. It was a animated series in Japan that featured the 5 lions that come together to form the Voltron super robot. And there were another series that were 5 vehicles, 2 different series.
Right. Okay.
But the executive producer, the creative force behind Voltron, his name was Peter Keefe, saw the similarities visually with the Japanese anime style and believed that he could take those 2 series and make one, which he did, successfully did. So you had Voltron, the Lion series, and Voltron, the Vehicle series. It was a total of 124 episodes.
Okay.
And that's what got me, that was my ramp up into this business.
Got it.
And as I said, we sold it all around the world. It performed exceptionally well. I think in terms of domestic U.S. syndication, it was the #1 performing program for the entire decade.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, it was on the cover of Life magazine, and it was a phenomenon.
Just to go back to like very rudimentary things, when you hear like, oh, I'll be doing international sales, do you think, oh gosh, I don't speak other languages. How does this work? I mean, this is, again, we're talking about pre-internet. We're talking about pre-cell phone. This was a very different industry back then.
Oh, a very different industry, different industry to say the least. I'll give you a couple anecdotes. Back then, you went to the international television market in the south of France called MIP. And then they had one in October called MIPCOM. We took a stand. I would be there with VHS tapes and a tape deck. And people would come and sit, and you would screen the program. And if you had interest, you would talk to them about what the deal might be, country, language, number of runs, that sort of thing. I'd prepare a deal memo that people would sign that in some cases was a binding contract. In other cases, it was just an indication that they want to do the deal.
Right.
And the very first deal I did was with a broadcaster in Greece. Very first deal I did with a broadcaster in Greece. And the terms of the deal were had to be a 10% payment due on signature of the deal memo. And he said to me, I'm signing the deal memo. After lunch, I'll bring you the funds.
Okay. Right away.
Said, okay.
Yeah.
Right away. So I said, okay, fine. I have lunch. I go back to the exhibition stand, and he shows up and he gives me $20,000 in cash. Cash.
Okay. What?
And I just sort of looked at it and said, okay, I guess so. So I took it to the owner of the company, and I said to him, his name was Ted Koppler, and I said, Ted, I got a gift for you. He said, what's that? I said, I got 20,000 for you. And he was like, what am I supposed to do with this? So
that's insane.
We actually had to set up an account to be able to get the money in.
Right. You're not allowed to travel with that.
No,
I mean, you could sneak it in, but
can't travel with that. No,
that's
not at
insane.
All. So it was a very different time in the industry. This would have been 1986, April of 1986, when the MIP market took place. And at that time, you could see the international landscape starting to really blossom.
Okay.
It really hit a high gear in the early and mid 90s. But when I say blossom, that used to be most international territories had a broadcast platform that was established by the state, public, BBC,
oh, right. Of course,
BBC, TF1, et cetera. And there was no cable, satellite television. There was just free TV. And there may be, depending on the size of the market, 2-3 platforms. That was it. And if you got on those platforms, you really had the country. You had
you had guaranteed ratings.
You had huge viewership. All right. Mm-hmm. So back then it was go to the markets with VHS tapes, screen it there, do deal memos, come back to the office, follow up with fax,
right?
Or phone
and also
calls.
The time differences. Like you must have been working crazy hours just to guarantee you could get on a call with certain people.
Exactly, because I was selling worldwide.
Right. Were deals made faster then because communication was harder? Okay.
Deals were made faster because decision makers were at the markets. Mm. Today, without casting aspersions on anybody, but today it's you take a meeting and they say, well, we've got to discuss this with our team. We've got to make a decision as to who, whether we're going to acquire or not acquire. And we need to put this through our search committee, acquisitions committee.
Yeah.
Back then, I met with individuals, major players in their respective markets, who made decisions on the spot.
Mm-hmm. So the deal was done. Yeah.
I met with Silvio Berlusconi.
Right. He could decide. Yeah. Decider.
He made the decision.
Yeah. There's no one he's reporting to.
Exactly. Yeah. I met with Leo Kirch of in Germany, the Kirch Group. I mean,
okay. So these are, that was it. That's the end of the line. Yeah.
Right. You had, when you met with the head of programming for TF1, she didn't have to go up the ladder. She just made the decisions. So it was easier in that sense. What was harder about it is you had fewer platforms to sell.
Of course, right. So the competition was intense because you're like, if one of these 3 networks doesn't air our show,
you're out of trouble.
You're
out of trouble. But getting back to the background, my background with Voltron, the beauty was when I took Voltron out, it was my very first series, and it was successful. And once you have a success established, broadcasters, especially when it comes to children's programming, have a tendency to say, well, this guy brought us Voltron and it was a huge hit. Just maybe he has the next hit.
Right. You have an eye for it. They trust
Maybe,
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a sense of trust. And of course, in the course of doing business, you had to deal with contracts and delivery of materials, and that's another whole.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear
when you talk
about
about when you talk about that business years ago. When I talk about years ago, back in the 1980s and early 90s, imagine you'd sell a program to a broadcaster. They would dub the program into their local language.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to organize sending over scripts, boxes of paper. Now it's
God.
internet. It's just one. It's
2
gone.
seconds. Yeah.
Cartons of paper with the scripts.
I can't even.
And so the delivery of materials was a huge, huge challenge and costly.
I can't even imagine. Yeah. I mean, so, and my other question is like, and I'm sure you've seen the changes in this. When you're distributing, let's say it goes to Switzerland, and they're making their own changes, are they still reporting back to whoever originally created Voltron, or are they reporting back to you or anybody?
Well, it depends. It depends on the market, et cetera. But basically, they didn't report back to the rights holders.
Okay.
What they would typically do is, for example, dub the program into French or Italian, and you had to assume that they were doing the correct job because they have a vested interest in making sure the program works, and they're a national platform. So they essentially did the dubbing, and they didn't report back. They didn't say, do you want to approve this? Do you want to approve the voice actors, et cetera?
Okay.
There were some interesting wrinkles. One wrinkle, for example, the Italian market, there was a woman who was a very astute buyer. She really held the keys to the kingdom in Italy because she was the buyer for the Rete Italia group. And the Rete Italia group was really powerful in Italy. So when you got Rete Italia for kids programming, you got the train, the tracks, the station, you got it all. Right?
I see. Okay.
And there was an interesting wrinkle in doing deals with her. She insisted on changing the theme music.
Oh, okay. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Theme music, she changed it. So she wrote the music for what was going to be your program.
And does she let you know that, or do you just find out?
No. That was part of the agreement. That was part of
it was part of the agreement. Okay.
Part of the agreement. Yeah, we're going to change the music. And if you didn't agree with that, go find another home.
Wow.
It was a deal breaker.
Okay. So, and was she right in the long run? Did you see
it didn't matter whether she was right. It was that or you're not on air.
Right.
So you said, okay, fine. You do it.
With all the cultural differences and things like that, I mean, we've heard that from some other people, like dealing with maybe the originators, or like, was there stuff that gets lost in translation and misunderstandings? I mean, it seems like a comedy of errors could happen. Yeah.
All the time. It happens all the time. I could give you, well, let me back up.
Okay.
So what I'm talking about is, boxes of scripts went off, dubbing was done. You really weren't that involved in it. And you just trusted the broadcaster, they were going to do the right job, et cetera. And that what I would have characterized that as the mid 80s, late 80s. Mm-hmm. By the 1990s, the marketplace, you could see, international I'm speaking about, was starting to really change. More platforms are coming on. So satellite platforms are coming on. I happened to be in England when England went from literally 4 platforms. You had the ITV, BBC, Channel 4, and I think one other. There was like 4 platforms. And then I was there in September when one day satellite TV came into the UK and there were 140 channels to choose from in like one day. Boom.
Yeah, it wasn't like 5 to 10. It was like it just to 140.
It just jumped.
Yeah.
It just jumped.
Wow.
And this kind of thing was happening all around Europe and other parts of the world. So satellite TV was starting to become a real force. So think of it as like cable TV in America. Okay.
Mhm.
So now you can see contracts were becoming more complicated. Deals were becoming more
Oh, yeah.
complicated. Okay. So what rights are you granting? Well, I'm granting you, the platform X is getting free TV in French language. I'll use that as an example. Platform Y is getting satellite TV in the language. And when does the term begin? When does it end? How many runs are you giving the free TV? When does that windowing happen? Who gets the first run? Who gets the second run?
Yeah.
So the deal started becoming more complicated.
Right. And even you can't even keep tabs on that stuff. Like if they did anything outside of the contract, who is even going to know? Yeah.
It's hard to track.
Yeah.
You're right. But it is traceable, but it takes more manpower to sort of track this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so at that point, you could see the international markets were really starting to expand. And in many ways, it sort of followed the trends of the United States. So we had, 3 networks or 4 networks, and then you have cable coming in, and then you have a lot more options because of cable. Well, the same thing was happening in Europe and the rest of Asia. Multiple platforms. Kids in particular, we're talking about the kids demographic, they could start finding other programs on other platforms. But at that time, it was really, I would describe them as the go-go years. Broadcasters were desperate for content. Mm-hmm. There wasn't enough content in the marketplace, and they needed to fill their airwaves.
Yeah.
And remember that historically, many of these channels I'm speaking now in terms of Europe, Brazil, Mexico, whatever. Many of these channels, they were dominant in their market. Whatever they put on, they were going to attract an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought because it attracted a big audience that it was great programming.
Okay, now for the lightning round.
I'm so good at lightning rounds. That's from Friends. It's my favorite show.
20 seconds on the clock starts now. Who is the captain of the USS Enterprise?
Oh, crap. Is it, Captain Stubing? No, Morgan? Crunch?
Next question. Which superhero is Tony Stark?
Stark. Did Game of Thrones have superheroes? I only watched 2 episodes.
What planet were Luke and Leia born on?
Planet Fitness?
Oh, time's up. Sorry. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, everybody. Mandy Kaplan here. Please check out my podcast, Make Me a Nerd, where each week an incredible guest tries to baptize this mainstream mom into the world of sci-fi, fantasy, and all things nerdy. Available wherever you podcast.
That's our show, folks.
Wait. I just thought of it. Padme Amidala gave birth to her twins Luke and Leia on Polis Massa. No, that's dumb. Is it Planet Hollywood?
Hey guys, Tara Sands here, and I want to let you know where Steve and I are going to be so we can meet you in person. I'll have something in LA coming up in September, Heroes Hideout, Albany, New York at the end of September, and I'll be in the Houston area October 12th. You can check out our Instagrams and Twitters and all that to find out where we'll be. Steve is at Steve Yurko, and I am at Tara Sands VO, and we hope to meet you in person real soon. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, Tara here. If you are enjoying the 4Kids Flashback podcast, here is another podcast you will probably like. It's called the One Piece Podcast. They have been covering One Piece since 2009, so there are about 1 million episodes for you to listen to. Highly recommend it. They do all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, break down the shows, interview actors. You're gonna dig it. Go to onepiecepodcast.com or look them up wherever you hear podcasts. And you might even hear a familiar voice that sounds a lot like Steve Yurko. Check it out now. Thanks.
And then suddenly the world starts becoming more competitive. And when they start acquiring content from American producers, or in some cases Japanese producers, you could see they can feel the seismic shift.
Mm-hmm. The quality difference.
Quality difference, the story difference, an aesthetic difference. All of that starts to bubble, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it becomes really frothy in the sense that there's a lot of activity and a lot of stuff. And then that was, I say, in the mid 90s. And then by the mid 90s, as I said, it was the go-go years, and people were grabbing and looking for anything that they thought could pull an audience. While some of the traditional producers of kids programs their head was still back into the old world of, well, this is what we do for the BBC. This is what we do with Rai in Italy. And then
they get left behind.
They get left behind.
Yeah, that's it.
And I must tell you, I've sold over 3,500 episodes of kids programming in my lifetime. Never sold a program to Rai. Because I'd take a meeting with Rai, it was a big public broadcaster, and there'd be 15 people sitting around the table. And some of them were political appointees because it was public broadcaster, and they were concerned about what's the political perspective, what's this, what's that. When you dealt with the Silvio Berlusconi group, one person, this one woman, bang.
Done, yeah.
You had 20 minutes in her office. That was it, 20 minutes, out, done, right? So anyway, so the world really began, in the international distribution, really began changing dramatically, I would say, by the early 1990s, when more and more platforms are coming on. And so then you had to be, as a marketing person, you had to be really adept at knowing how to manage window strategies, who goes first, what time periods can you possibly secure, is there other promotional support that you can get? And of course, on the dubbing front, that business changed too, because it used to be, years ago, I would sell to a broadcaster in pick a country, Sweden, Denmark, whatever. They would dub the program, and then I would have access, the rights holder, but I'm saying
the rights holder,
marketing guy, I would have access to those tracks to resell.
Oh, to their foreign language tracks. You would keep the right.
That was that was a part of the deal. That was the deal that I used to strike.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Okay, very good deal. But you do that today?
No, it's unheard of. Yeah.
Today, it's maybe the best you can do is you get it back at 50% of the cost of the dubbing.
Right.
But when I was doing it, I was like demanding you give me the broadcast.
Why would you want that? Just out of curiosity, why would I want the language back?
Yeah. Because if I sold, let's say I sold a program into a market, pick any market, and I sold it to the free platform.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you're saying. So then now you can sell it to the pay. I understand now. Okay.
And by the way, there's another whole sector of the business, home video.
I see. So you would, I did see. I thought they would have had that. Okay. So that would go back to you.
I would keep those rights.
Oh, you're a genius.
On behalf of the rights holders. You really had to think 360.
Yeah.
And because I'll give you some examples as we get into the mid 90s and late 90s when I get into Pokemon. So I would have to negotiate the windows. I would have to negotiate matters related to dubbing. Didn't have to do too much in terms of voice approval, voice actors, anything like that. That was really left to the broadcasters. And I spent my time on the hunt, on the prowl for new markets, new places where I could sell this, et cetera, And then, as I say, then it really just started to develop a momentum of its own. And so go back to my days with Voltron, the first most successful Japanese program introduced into the marketplace. And at that time, shortly after that, there was a surge of Japanese animated programming that was brought into America and other parts of Europe, right? But if I used to have this expression, if anybody could kill a good opportunity in the business, it would be broadcasters or toy companies. The two of them could kill
There you go. Yeah.
Because they, in my estimation, they would kill it by, a broadcaster would kill it by oversaturation. So if the program went on and it did well, hell, they would put it on for 2 hours, back to back, because it was doing well. Or a toy company would just saturate the market with toys, and after it burns out, overdone.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking as much about the tail of the comet how you can
Mhm.
stretch it out over time.
Do you think
So
that's because nothing had lasted that long? So they were thinking we better get in now because we're not seeing longevity in this?
partly, but I think it's it's partly that, it's partly the nature of kids' business. When do kids ultimately just say, I don't like this anymore? You never know when that's going
Right.
to happen.
So let's bombard them, get the,
Right.
it's greed.
Get it while you can.
Let's make their
It's greed.
money and yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great. That's great. Get it while you can. And, you know, people sometimes have asked me about the challenge of selling children's programming. It's incredibly challenging for the following reason. You're selling to adults.
Mhm.
Start there. You're selling to adults about what you believe children will like. And all of us, I contend that all of us as adults suffer from defective recall about our childhood.
Explain that, please.
So, what were you really thinking about when you were an 8 or 9 year old girl, and now you're in your late 20s? You
Right.
you
Your
can't.
memory is not
Your memory
accurate.
it's flawed. It's
Yeah,
defective.
of
It's
course, yeah.
flawed. And what was your thinking? What did you think about girls or boys? And what did you think about
Right.
superheroes? It's just right. So imagine you're sitting and trying to sell an adult an original television program, not something derived from a book or anything,
Mhm.
an original television concept. And it's hard for them to wrap their head around it. So they really don't, it's a very difficult
Right.
task.
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because it does lead me into something about Pokemon where the common thing at the time was adults saying, we don't understand this, but the kids love it. So did that kind of break the rules in that way?
Well, in some ways, I'll tell you about that. In some ways it did, but it historically, adults didn't get, I can give you phenomena. Voltron, huge phenomenon. Adults didn't get it.
Right.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, what the hell is that all about?
Right.
And right. And
So a kid had to ask an adult, like, hey, I saw this. Please, mommy,
exactly.
let me watch this. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it also empowers the kid, which is a smart thing too.
Right. Well, with Voltron, Pokemon was particularly unique, and I'll get into that in a minute, because it has its own language, its own world, its own characters, and I believe kids felt that is their world, and adults know nothing about it, and they like to keep it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay?
It's their language. Even just the fact that the Pokemon don't speak, that's their language. It's the kid feels ownership over this. And then once a parent gets left behind, it's done. Like my friends who have kids have given up trying to understand Pokemon.
Yeah. So now we're up to around the time of Pokemon. Mm-hmm. So we're saying late 90s. What was the marketplace like at that point? And I'm talking international market at the moment. I'm not talking about US. What was the marketplace like? Japanese animation was dead.
Right. Sailor Moon hadn't really worked. They tried that.
Everybody said, forget it. Japanese animation, nobody wants it. And then there was also some other baggage that was carried with Japanese animation. Some people felt it was too violent, and other people thought it was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I came upon Pokemon actually through Norman Grossfeld,
right,
who was executive producer, very talented man, really talented person. And Norman called it to my attention by telling me, hey, look, at the time the company was called LCI, then it became 4Kids. Mm-hmm. Look, this company is going to secure the rights for domestic distribution of this series called Pokemon, which Nintendo believes will be a successful property. Nobody's doing anything with the international rights. Why don't you go in and see if you can get the international rights?
Okay.
So I went in and had a conversation with the chairman of the company and secured the international distribution rights outside of Japan and the US.
Okay. Okay. So only those two territories.
In parts of Asia,
Okay.
Okay? But everything else was open. So having had experience with Japanese animation, having sold Voltron,
Mm-hmm.
I follow a very simple practice when I look at programming to determine whether it's something that I think will work, especially something like Japanese anime. I look at the program, I turn off the sound.
Oh,
I just watch the picture. And if the picture tells a story, you're halfway home.
got it. Wow. Yeah.
So if I can
It's a good
watch
test.
it, just the picture,
Yeah.
okay. Because the rest of it I don't understand because it's Japanese, et cetera, and
Right.
the music is different. But then I think, okay, this could work. So I've secured the distribution rights with Pokémon, spent considerable amount of time with Norman, as I said, Norman Grossfeld, exec producer, about getting his insights, the program, the scripts, the characters, et cetera. And I then went off into the marketplace to try to sell it. Okay.
Where do you
And-
start? Like, when you look at a show like Pokemon, like versus Voltron or versus any other property, in your head, do you go, okay, I think this is going to be the toughest sell or the easiest sell? Like, were there territories that you thought, let me keep that to the end? Or
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I had a terrific database over the years built up with television, home video companies, et cetera. And the bulk of the money that you make in the business comes out of about 10 markets.
okay,
The rest were all. So I thought, I'm not going to spend my time with Central Europe. I'm not going to spend my time in the Balkans or the Middle East. I'm going to concentrate on the big markets.
okay,
So I take it out to the big markets and initially rejected. Just
okay.
outright rejection. With the exception of Rat-Italia in Italy, with the woman who I've sold a lot of content.
Oh, okay. Your friend. Yeah.
She heard that I had the rights. She called me.
That's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, well, do you want to see the completed episode? No. I trust you. You represent it. I trust you. I'm going to buy it.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So I had one market in place. All right.
Okay. Something.
Then I was able to pick up a deal in Australia. And without getting into the business terms and conditions too much because of confidentiality, the broadcasters in Australia were like, no. And here was the common theme of the rejection. It's Japanese animation. Okay.
That was
Number one. Japanese animation. It's over. Japanese animation is dead. Nobody wants it. Second thing, you got to be kidding me, Brian. 150 monsters? There's no way in hell. There's no way in hell a kid can track 150 monsters.
Ooh, there.
It's just
that's some humble pie. Yeah.
Right. So no, we're not interested in it. So without giving you names, I can tell you territories. Germany. The comment was, this was told to me in January when I took it out in the marketplace. The comment was, Brian, no way. Why? How did you become involved in this?
Oh, insulting you. Yeah.
we have spent, the quote was, we have spent the better part of 40 years or 50, whatever it was at the time, re-educating German children so that we don't have a disaster the way we did the last century. And you bring us this?
Wow.
No way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, okay.
In the UK, I kept this. This was a fax. In the UK, we declined this series. Now, get this. This is what I mean about selling adults. Because British children do not like Japanese animation.
Wow.
This is a major platform.
Wow.
The buyer had major position in the UK. So those are the kinds of comments that I got.
Which is similar to what Norman was hearing when he was trying to get placement on television. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you guys were just getting doors slammed in your faces. Yeah. It's amazing you all can just kept on.
Norman and I communicated quite regularly. I mean, I'd go down to the office and chat with him, and he'd come in to see me and say, what about this? And we would talk quite regularly. Because I said, he's a very talented guy. So I knew that what I had to do, so mind you, it was getting ready to launch in the United States in September. And here I am in January, February, March, getting rejection. And I knew I got to build a fire somewhere to be able to say, it's working, take a look at it, reconsider this. And I must come back and tell you, there was one other issue that was a major problem in the beginning with Pokémon.
The seizures episode?
The seizure
yes,
episode.
of course. Yeah.
And the belief there by international broadcasters and the media, the TV media, trade media in general, was this sent 450 kids to the hospital because of violence. Everybody assumed it was violence.
Right. They didn't really understand the nuance of what had happened.
So I'm going to come back to that. Put a pin in that concept, because I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So anyway, I had to get it on somehow. So Canada came on board because I was able to tell the Canadian broadcaster, this is going to be on in the United States. It's going to be coming into your marketplace through all those channels on the border. You might as well get on board. It's going to come. You might as well. Yeah. Okay. We'll buy it. Okay. In Australia, I sold it back to Nintendo Australia.
Well, okay. See, I'm glad you said that, because this is my question then. Because Nintendo America had a strong presence and a lot of influence over the decisions that were made on the show, because we spoke to Gail Tilden, who worked there.
Yes, she was terrific. Yeah.
Amazing. What an incredible woman. And when you're going to a territory, let's say, to sell it, that doesn't have a local Nintendo office, who is going to oversee that stuff? Like, is there a Nintendo? I guess by that point there was a Nintendo Italy. So they're making all the name changes and because Nintendo was so hands-on.
I'll tell you about that. But let me finish the Australia.
Oh, sorry.
Story,
okay.
Then I'll come back, because there's a sequence. There's a sequence.
Oh, sorry. Here you go.
No, that's okay. So I sold to Nintendo Australia because the broadcasters in Australia passed on the program.
Oh,
okay. So Gail, of course, when she sees the deal memo come in from me, Nintendo Australia, what is this? Why is our company, this is a property that we own this. Why are we buying it and paying you money? And I say, well, my company is not 4Kids. My company, I make money off the distribution, Gail, and this is a transaction.
Right.
And I will tell you, quite frankly, why Nintendo Australia bought it. They believed it was going to be successful. And they knew if they didn't have it on TV, they wouldn't be able to get the games into their marketplace. They wanted to go to the corporate offices and say, we want 50,000 games. And how do you justify whatever the number was they wanted to order? How do you justify it? It's going to be on TV.
Right.
So that was like a hand in glove relationship. So the guys at Nintendo Australia loved me because I was able to say, yeah, I'll do the deal with you. Let's get it going.
I hope you gave them a little bit of a bargain because it was their show.
When you talk about Nintendo, in some markets they had offices, in other markets they didn't. So there was a major meeting in Italy. It was in the late spring, and Gail wanted me to go and make a presentation about international television exhibition, etc. And I know that I was very direct in my comments, and I know that it ruffled some feathers. But I said to all these, they're all Nintendo or third-party distributors. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to do one simple thing. Stay the hell out of the TV business. Because if you go to the TV stations and say, oh, Pokemon's going to be big, you're going to kill the deal. Because the broadcasters are going to say, oh, really? How much are you going to pay me to put this program on air?
Right.
Or
that's how
I want 10% of all of your sales. Or you're going to have to give me X number of hundreds of thousands of euros in advertising support.
Right.
So I told all these distributors, do not contact the television station. That's my job.
Right. Like, trust me on this. Yeah, this is what I do.
This is what I do. And if I run into trouble, if I hit a wall, I may reach out for you to talk about what we can do collaboratively to get this place. But for the moment, stay the hell away. I don't want to hear anybody reaching out to a broadcaster. I guarantee you it's trouble. So, because when I took this out for international distribution, and Gail had an issue with this in the beginning, but then accepted my argument. At the time, we did print advertising in trade magazines. I had flyers, one-sheeters produced. Nowhere was there a Nintendo logo, anywhere.
Interesting. What was your reasoning?
Same reason. Why would you put a Nintendo logo on a TV trade ad or a one-sheeter when you're sitting with a broadcaster from France, Italy, Germany, whatever, and saying, no, Nintendo is behind this program? They don't do much advertising with us. We want them to come advertise.
Oh, I see.
And it opens up the whole door to give me a cut of all of your merchandise licensing.
Right. But see, my question is when you were pitching this show, were you pitching it to go hand in hand with like the game's going to blow this up?
No.
So the game was not even.
I never brought it up.
Interesting.
I never brought it up.
That's fascinating to me.
Let's assume that you're the buyer, Tara. And what I would say is, I represent this program, Pokémon, which I think will be a wonderful addition to your program schedule. Here's why I think it will work. The characters of this storyline is that, et cetera. There's 52 episodes. I think it's fantastic. I would never discuss trading cards, never discuss games, merchandise, nothing.
That's so interesting to me. I guess I always think of it as like, wow, this Pokemon is so smart because it's coming at it from all angles. So even if, the cards might get the kid into the show or the game might get the kid into the show, there's all these different avenues, but you're selling the show on its own merits, which is great because then they're excited about having the show.
Well, quite cynically, I used to say to friends of mine in the business, when I sit and have a conversation with a buyer, I want to keep the conversation about programming, something that they think they know something about.
Right.
But I sure as hell don't want to talk about video games, trading cards, toys, because they know nothing about that business. So just keep it focused totally on the television program.
Oh, interesting. On a little bit of a tangent, I was curious too about when you're selling the show. Like I've gotten to travel the world because our voices are heard in these other territories, like Australia and Scotland and the UK, all over the UK. Was there ever a discussion about replacing the English voices with their accented voices in those places?
There certainly was. And how did that unfold?
Yeah.
That unfolded with, obviously, the human characters. They're going to be dubbed into that language, right? And Gail she was really managed things very tightly, to say the least. But, she was a great brand manager. And she insisted that we at least review the voice actors.
Oh,
for the German or the French or Italian, et cetera. So I did that. So I not only sold the programs, and I would then say, send in the voice actors, the samples, please.
Wow.
And I would say whether this is right or this is wrong. The issue of the Pokemon characters themselves, Charizard, Balthazar.
You're way off, and I love that you're way off. Okay, yeah.
So all of those voices, there was a conversation that took place where the Nintendo representatives in Germany or Italy and the major markets were pushing to have the character names changed into German or Italian or whatever.
For the Pokemon themselves, you're talking the creatures,
Pokemon,
not the Ash.
No.
Okay.
Right. The creatures. And Norman and I were pushing back very hard to say, don't do this. And I remember having a meeting with Norman and the Japanese rights holders and Nintendo to say, don't do this because these are meaningless names. So the analogy that we used was Star Wars. Chewbacca is Chewbacca the world over.
Right. Although
R2D2.
that's so interesting because in our conversation with Gail, we talked about how when they named the first 150, they gave 3 options for each, and there was this very specific reasoning. But I understand in selling the show why you'd want to keep the consistency.
So they weren't changed. And Norman built into the audio track the voices so they couldn't be changed.
Oh, he made it part of the track.
Yeah. Couldn't be changed. And what's funny about it is when the Greek broadcaster sent in the voices, the Greek broadcaster thought they would also have to dub the Pokemon characters. And so I'm listening to the voices, and then I hear in a very deep voice, Pikachu, Pikachu. And I was like, whoa, wait.
Oh boy.
Guys, no, stop. You're not changing these. You're not, so there was that sort of level of focus that I had to bring to
what a relief for them knowing they didn't have to redub all that. But I've heard that my role was changed in 3 languages, and everywhere else they kept my Bulbasaur voice. So I'm not sure what those, I can't remember what
I don't think it was ever changed. I can tell you this, Ash was Ash the world over, except France.
France insisted on changing his name. Okay.
Right. Why? Because the H is silent in French.
Oh,
Ash.
and it would be ass. Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
Sorry.
Hashish. Ash. Hashish.
Oh, interesting.
Ash.
See, this is the kind of stuff I love hearing about, like these little.
So, and Nintendo America, no, you don't change it.
Right.
So I had to go behind the scenes and get to Nintendo France and say, hey, Stefan, pick up the phone, call Nintendo America, and remind them the problem.
Why? Yeah, once there's a good explanation, they understand. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the one market the only market I'm aware of that was changed. So now chronologically, I'm up to the point of, so I've sold Canada, Australia. Italy is not broadcast yet. It's just Canada, Australia, and America.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of some other markets. Not only did the British market say British children don't like Japanese animation, the French market was no, it's dead. Anime is dead. No, we don't touch this.
Wow.
And I remember dealing with the French TF1, the big broadcaster there, and I tried over and over again with phone calls, meeting, and no, Brian, please don't. It's over. We're not
Leave us alone, Brian.
So I said, well, I have an offer from a satellite channel, 4Kids, in France, and I just want to know if there's any chance, because I know you have a policy, you go first.
Right. Oh, so okay. So this gets now there's competition.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to, Brian, don't worry, we'll never buy it. You can sell it to Fox. We don't care. Good luck. Wow. That was September 1st. September 27th.
You get a gift basket, I hope.
You're going to be at MIP. We'd like to have him. Could you come to Paris before? Dominique, why do I come to Paris? Come on, Brian. We'd like to see you in Paris. Dominique, there's no reason to see me in Paris. Brian, please, dinner's on us. We'll want you to come to Paris. The German market, wherein I was told we spent 50 years re-educating German youth. Look what you're doing, the damage with this kind of program. The German market, that was even sooner.
Well, is this because
they saw the success in the United States?
That's what I was going to say. That's exactly that window.
They saw the success, and the buyer called me. I'm very close to the buyer. She sent me an email yesterday to see how I was doing. The buyer said, "We'd like you to come to Munich." This is the week before Christmas.
Wow.
And I said, again, why am I coming to Munich? look, you know my feeling about the program, she said, but my feelings don't matter. What matters is what do kids think. And she said, we've seen the numbers.
Yep.
Get over here. We'll do a deal. Get over here. So then it started to roll.
Right. And then your phone rings instead of you having to solicit. Yeah.
Then I can sit back. I'm in the sweet spot now.
Yeah.
Right. Then they're coming to me. Then I'm really putting the screws to them in terms of the kind of deals that I'm doing, the kind of things that I'm demanding.
Right. And you just call Norman laughing like, you're not going to believe.
Hey, Norman, and you talk about the amount of time you spend and the time difference, et cetera. I used to leave my laptop on with the internet on in my study, in my home. And I would be I'm a light sleeper, and I would be in bed and I would hear, you got mail.
All night long.
Boom, boom, boom. And I would come in sometimes, 6 a.m, 5 a.m, because Europe is up and moving, with offers that I'm now starting to negotiate and deal with. So the buyer from the UK, who said, they will never take it. What happened in that market, again, a very good contact of mine, nobody wanted it in the UK whatsoever. Obviously, the BBC wouldn't touch it.
No.
The ITV wasn't going to touch it. I had a woman who was a very good professional who I had known from years before, selling Voltron and things like that. She was working with Sky Television. At the time, Sky did not have kids programming. And I told her, I said, Penny Harris, I said, Penny, if at any time you guys change your mind, I got a program that will just blow your skirt away. Okay. It's just, yeah, okay, Brian. Yeah, okay, fine.
Sure. Yeah.
Called me.
There you
said,
go.
Hey, Brian, I just got the news. They've taken the gloves off. We can get kids programming. What's that program you have again? I said, Pokemon, Penny. So I sell Pokemon to her. Now, remember, this is satellite TV. It's not the BBC, it's not Channel 4, et cetera. She starts it. They start broadcasting in April. By September, we get a composite of the ratings. They had the 50 top performing children's programs on a per broadcast basis. So not as a series, but on a per broadcast basis. 49 of the 50 programs were Pokemon on Sky TV.
Oh my God. That's so interesting. Now, when you're
that buyer who said to me, British children don't like it, he now is back on the phone with me saying, hey, we'd like to acquire this. And I said, yeah, okay, fine. And he said, so I'd like to start with season 1. And by now I knew that there was season 2 in the pipeline.
Right.
So I said, well, no, I don't sell season 1. Well, he said, we can only acquire season 1. We want to see how it does. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to charge for 2 seasons. And he said, sorry, all I can do, Brian, is 1 season, because frankly, I'm not sure it's going to work. So I said, okay. So they do 1 season. They start in September. By November, he calls me and says, I'd like to do, and he said for season 2. By this time, Norman had advised me there's going to be season 3. So I said to him, well, okay, we can do this deal. But I said, it's going to be 104 episodes. And he said, no. He said, I want to buy season 2. And I said, no, it's seasons 2 and 3 you're buying.
That's the deal. Yeah.
So he said, no, Brian, it's season 2. And I said, Nigel, I think we got a bad connection here. we got problems here. You're not hearing me. Well, what do you mean, Brian? I said, there's a season 3. You're buying that too. He said, oh shit. And I said,
too late.
this is a good deal, because my suspicion is there may be season 4, 5, 6. You don't know. So anyway, those were some of the more interesting anecdotes I had.
Yeah.
And a couple others that you might find equally sort of interesting. One was I got a call one day from the buyer broadcaster in the Middle East. Pokemon is going to be removed from television. Why?
Uh-oh.
Because an imam, an imam in the Muslim.
One of the leaders, yeah.
An imam has declared a fatwa against Pokemon. You know what fatwa is?
Yeah. Well, we should explain it to our listeners, but I'll let you explain it. But I know it from Curb Your Enthusiasm, honestly. So.
Okay. A fatwa is when there's a declaration made that something is verboten. It can't be seen, bought, purchased, said whatsoever. So a fatwa has been declared. And I said, on what basis? And of course, you come to learn that Iman can declare anything, and the population.
And that's the word. Yeah, that's it.
Word.
That's the final word. Yeah.
Pokemon is a television program that promotes Judaism among children.
Wow.
Really?
Interesting.
On what basis, I ask? Well, the characters.
The Japanese characters. Okay.
Pikachu says, become a Jew.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, you have to dig so deep for that, like as if the Japanese creators had
Right. But you're dealing with craziness.
Yeah.
The other one that I love, another anecdote that I love, was I got a call from a broadcast group in Scandinavia that said by now Pokemon was hot.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call from a Scandinavian broadcaster to say that we're taking this program off the air. And I said, well, on what grounds? It's nothing more than a commercial for the sale of Pokemon trading cards and games.
Right.
Okay. But Pokemon caught the Nintendo distributor and the toy companies by surprise. It really caught on so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have merchandise on the shelves.
Oh, right. They hadn't caught up yet. I forgot about that. The games were out. The games were making money, but
not in this particular market.
Yeah,
because it wasn't, Nintendo didn't have offices. They had
so you couldn't really argue that yet. Yeah.
So I said, quite cleverly, look, go into a store in Copenhagen, and if you can find Pokemon merchandise, buy it, take a picture of it, send it to me, because I don't think you're going to find it. The buyer comes back and says, you're right, there is no merchandise. I said, the program is not designed to sell merchandise, but the buyer wanted to get something out of this transaction.
Right.
So she said, well, look at that. Look at the 30 seconds at the end of the program where it's the Pokemon rap song. And I said, yes. All that is doing is promoting trading card games. So I said, and by the way, that was a very clever thing that Norman built into the program.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, well, you know what? You might have a case there. Cut the song.
Right. There's your answer. Yeah.
They cut the
problem solved.
They cut the song. But I wanted to say it on here.
Well, okay. See, you led me into my question then, because we discussed music with the Voltron theme. Now, when we spoke to some of the music people, they had done so much new music for Pokemon because they want, I mean, this is again, commerce, they're going to make money on this. What happens when you go to these other territories? Do they keep this 4Kids music, or do they want to do their own?
The music is untouched, other than the Italy theme song. Music is untouched.
Other than Italy, okay.
Right. Other than Italy, everything remains the same. And by the way, going back to the final sort of closing that I did to really put the squeeze on in a lot of other markets to get Pokemon in all these markets, the final squeeze was there was an episode. A lot of buyers thought violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was an episode that was produced that music played an important role in this episode. The story is, I'm trying to think of the episode number, but the story is a lot of Pikachus appear in the program, and Ash has to make a decision. Do I let Pikachu go back with his other Pikachus?
Right. It's a big, this is a big emotional.
It's an emotional.
Yeah.
And there was a song that John Leffler and John Siegler produced, The Long Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this real tear-jerking.
This is in the movie, right? I believe this is.
I don't know if it was in the movie. It was in this episode, The Long Goodbye.
Okay.
And it is such a tear-jerker. So when broadcasters would say, well, I might have interest in Pokemon, could you send me an episode to screen? That's the episode I would send out.
Oh, you're smart.
And some of the buyers would send a note back and say, no, or it would email me back or fax me, whatever, and would say, I'm sorry, but I'm looking for the Pokemon show. And I would say, no, that is Pokemon. And they would say, but it's not violent. No, it's a sweet children's program. Sweet children's program.
It's not
Do you want to buy?
Yeah.
Do you want to buy? You know? So anyway, those are some, and
That's so funny.
I've got a ton of anecdotes that I can share with you. I'll bore you. In every market,
this is so interesting.
In every market, there was something sort of unique, and there was always some kind of wrinkle to the deal or the negotiation, et cetera. Some people ask me, what was the last market to close in Europe? The last major market to close in Europe was Spain.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Spain, last major market to close. And nobody wanted that. And so I wound up selling to a distributor, very successful distributor named BRB. And after it was sold, all the and went on air and was successful, all the channel buyers.
Well, anime is huge in Spain now.
Right.
Yeah.
All the buyers came back and said, why didn't you give us an opportunity? Right. The other one other anecdote that was a wrinkle, because when you get down to the smaller markets where the license fee isn't big and the program has to be dubbed, I really had to start thinking 360, multiple levels. How am I going to get this dubbed?
Mm-hmm.
So sold it to Russia. Okay. And Hasbro, at this point, Hasbro, a toy company, was actively involved. And Hasbro, the toy representative from Hasbro, who he was based in Poland, but his territory included Russia, called me and said, I know how to deal with Russia. You don't know how to deal with Russia. And I want to handle this. And I want to be sure this program's going to be. And I said, look, I'm going to give you advice. Stay the hell away from the broadcasters, because if you deal with a broadcaster, you're going to have trouble. And market like Russia, you American, you don't understand. I live here. I know. So I said, okay. So you're going to buy it. Hasbro Poland buys it, and you're going to place it. Right. And he said, and somehow we have to get it dubbed. So I said, okay, because the broadcaster wasn't going to pay for dubbing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the music group that was doing the Pokemon distribution of the Pokemon CD around Europe.
Right.
They saw it and said, okay, this could be an opportunity to break into Russia. So they said, we'll do the dubbing. Okay. A few months go by, and the Hasbro Poland calls me, and livid. The program's not on air. And I got hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars of toys sitting on the shelf, and nobody ever. And I said, and what's the reason it's not on air? Because of the dubbing that you did. You screwed this up. The dubbing. I said, back up.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find out. So I go to the music company to do the dubbing. I said, guys, I'm getting this complaint. Check on it for me, will you? Sure enough, they come back and say, yeah, the program's not on air because the buyer demanded $50,000 in cash.
Oh, okay.
from Hasbro,
Hmm.
and they haven't given it.
Well,
So
there you go.
So I called the Hasbro representative and say, let me ask you something. Was there any conversation that you had with the buyer about cash for this? Yeah. Well, that's why the program's not on air. Well, I'm not putting it on. I'm not giving them cash till it goes on air. No. You don't understand. It doesn't go on air. He's got the leverage.
Yeah.
He's the broadcaster.
Wow.
Get on a plane, get the $50,000 and put it in his hand, and don't bother me.
Oh my
again.
God.
Yeah. So every market has these sort of small wrinkles.
I mean, this is the most fascinating job that I didn't even really know existed.
And another market,
Yeah.
and I'll leave you this other.
No, this is great.
This was a market in Macedonia and Bulgaria.
Oh my God.
And I had to get it dubbed, and the dubbing costs, right? So I was able to put a deal together with a company that produced and sold croissants and baked goods.
What?
Right?
Wait, what?
Croissants, baked goods. And so
That's
I
the
said,
company
okay.
okay.
So I said, you guys put the money up for the dubbing, okay? And that we will say that costs $1,500 an episode. So that has a value of $78,000. Okay. You can deduct from your royalty statement the $78,000 you put for the
Okay.
dubbing.
That makes sense. Okay. So
Makes sense.
you
Right.
get creative with the
Right. You got
deals. Yeah.
creative. In 1 year, the royalty that they paid out for croissants sold in Macedonia and Bulgaria was $700,000.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
This is fascinating.
Crazy,
Um,
huh?
So you mentioned these satellite stations that you would go to because cable's a new thing and all that. And we've talked to some kids, or like we do a thing where kids call in and, or not kids, but they were kids at the time. And they would say like, oh, I didn't get that channel, so I would have to go to my grandparents' house and watch. Was there a real push for those main channels, or would you, I mean, what was the difference? Like, were you saying, oh, this is only in wealthy households now? Like, what were you seeing in terms of who was watching when you would go to a satellite channel in those days?
Who was watching? Kids of all socioeconomic groups. It was a phenomena.
So they would
you,
find a way to watch, is what you're saying. Yeah.
they would find a way to watch. And remember, back then, in the late 90s, there was still a home video business. And
Right.
home video was a booming business. I can tell you, a market like Netherlands, Netherlands is a population of 14 million people. We sold 1.4 million Pokémon DVDs.
Oh my God. That's insane.
Crazy.
That's
Crazy.
insane.
Yeah. It's always a phenomenon.
So some of the questions that some of the fans had to do with like Ultraman Tiga. Was that a show that you worked on selling
No,
some of the rights for?
I
Okay.
didn't work on Ultraman.
Let's skip that. So one of my questions was, we talk so much about standards and practices on this show because obviously they are much more lenient in Japan about what children are watching. And then it comes to 4Kids. They start editing Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, even Pokemon has these edits. In other markets, were they wanting the original Japanese to make
No.
those changes? Or they always went with the 4Kids versions?
They always went with a 4Kids version because most, especially the big markets, most of those big markets are more concerned about imagery, storyline, language than the United States.
So who now in your experience,
other than
sorry.
the issue of sex.
Right.
Okay. So in Europe, it's not a big deal. In America, it's a big deal. Oh, you showed skin. No, you can't do this. Oh, you can't. Right. Europe.
Right.
Yeah, but Europe is very, very sensitive on issues of violence, aggressive language, etc. They knew that 4Kids would do a really good job at adapting the program that would meet their broadcast standards.
So that's a huge deal for them because they're buying a ready-made product.
Right. And so when I would sell these programs, and this is one of the benefits of having worked with Norman and his staff, Michael Hegney and guys like this, I could go to buyers. I would take, in some cases, just the theme song and some cuts from the animation. I would go to the MIP market in April and say, here's the program. Here's what it's going to be about. Are you interested? And I'm going to tell you, there's 52 episodes of this series. It's made.
It's done. Yeah.
So now you're a broadcaster. You got to make a decision. Do I buy this or I not buy this? Here's this crazy Irish American who brought us Pokemon, and it was huge, and I just can't take a chance. He may have another hit. Boom. And so I was able to really, really place a lot of content over the years. And one of the benefits was the fact it was well done by the 4Kids people.
Because we do think of our S&P as pretty strict. So did you then, once cable and all this stuff started, obviously streaming, did that change your work at all and your job?
Well, it made it much more complicated. So as you can imagine now, today you think about the rights that you're negotiating: free TV, pay TV, satellite TV, fast TV, AVOD, SVOD, YouTube, TikTok.
And everything we don't even know that hasn't been invented yet.
anything yet to be invented. Yeah. Exactly. So it's much more complicated today. And, the windowing strategies and who gets what rights and is there exclusive, is there non-exclusive? And what you're seeing is, in the kids business, again, this is in the US and Canada. I got my hands on some very good research the other day from the Boston Consulting Group. Kids in the US and Canada between the ages of 4 and 14 spend 90 minutes a day on TikTok and 65 minutes a day on YouTube.
Wow. Well, that's upsetting.
So yeah, exactly. So you wonder why Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and Disney are struggling.
Yeah.
And
then you see the layoffs and you see this, and this is why.
Exactly. I know.
So what was the next show for 4Kids that you were responsible for distribution?
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was next. Okay.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was next, and Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So were people just lining up for you after this because you've given them this Pokemon gift?
Yeah. Turtles was the only program I've ever sold, children's program I've ever sold that wasn't based on wasn't an original series. It was based upon the Turtles.
Right.
To show you the benefit of selling something that's had a previous, I put the major deals together for Turtles within 6 months worldwide.
My God. Wow.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a different thing because what happened with Yu-Gi-Oh! Was, for me, was those broadcasters that acquired Pokemon were next in line to get Yu-Gi-Oh! And those that didn't get it, they wanted Yu-Gi-Oh! Too. Because
got it. Right.
Hey,
yeah,
this guy's got the touch. He's got something here. Let's hustle. Let's get it. So yeah.
Well, now you had gone from working with Nintendo on this for Pokemon, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a different thing because they don't have offices all over. And so how is that handled in terms of name changes and all of that stuff now that there's no Nintendo to go to?
I basically was responsible for selling it, managing issues regarding dubbing, etc. There was virtually no involvement.
Wow.
The trading card company. The most involvement I would have had was from the trading card distributor in the US. What was their name now? Upper Deck.
Oh, right. Of course.
So I had to deal with Upper Deck when they would call and are we on? Are we not on? Where could we be? Can we help you? And they were helpful because they knew if it got on television, they would sell their trading cards,
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't have the same legs. It was still did, they've been doing it for years.
Still on. Yeah.
Right. But Pokemon, because with Pokemon, you had success with television, you had success with trading card game, you had success with video game, and there's even had success with a movie.
Mm-hmm. And it's unheard of.
it's unheard of. And it was a moment in my life that actually, and I'm not overstating this, it was actually magical. And that's the beauty of the kids business.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's going to come from. It doesn't have to come from the Hollywood studios. It can come from look, the big hits came from in syndication. Yeah. Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, Voltron, Pokemon. It didn't come from the big studios,
Right.
And so that's the magic of the business.
Absolutely. And then
you don't know what you have, and then you get it out there, and suddenly, boom! It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that too, because as the actors, we're the ones going to these conventions around the world, and we're lucky enough to hear these kids tell us their stories. And I say to them, like, you shouldn't be thanking me, or it's people like you who work day and night on getting these things distributed. So on their behalf, thank you for the tireless work you did.
I appreciate it, but who I really appreciate heavily? I appreciate the creatives.
Yeah,
the
artists. My God.
The writers, the actors, because in fact, I mean, I always use the example of Warner Brothers Classics and Mel Blanc's voices. Where would those characters be without Mel Blanc's voices? Foghorn Leghorn or
right. Well, it's a team. I mean, that's exactly what this is. We're all cogs in this Pokemon wheel.
So I really am deeply appreciative and value very much the writers, the music producers, the voice actors, the editors. They're the ones that make it happen. And I always used to compliment Norman, and I would say, Norman, in many ways, you really make my job easy because I can go out in the marketplace with confidence, knowing that your team is going to give me quality production.
Yeah.
And, but TV buyers around the world can accept the fact that a TV show didn't work. They can accept that. But what they have a hard time accepting is when you don't put it on the screen. When you sell in a Mercedes and you deliver a Pinto,
right?
that's what bothers them. But if you put it on the screen, they're okay with it. They'll accept the fact that it didn't work. So, Norman and his team. So I'm deeply appreciative of the creative people, always, because
I mean, it was a group effort, and I always think about that too. Like the 4Kids in general was a really special moment in time where all those people were on one floor in one building doing this creative work. Was so different than anything we had experienced.
I can tell you, for example, there were years when 4Kids put more content into the British television market than Disney.
Wow. Oh, that's remarkable.
Oh, well, I mean, we were dominating. I was on a roll. I was dominating. I'd go to the MIT market. I'll leave you with this. I'd go to the MIT market in those years, and I would say, meet with a buyer, and they'd say, so what do we have? Well, we got season 6 or 7, whatever, Pokemon. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll take that. I got season 3 of Turtles. Okay, that's 26. Yeah, we'll take that. I got season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, yeah, well, how many is that? 49. Okay, and then I would say, okay, so we're pretty well done here. Yeah. Then I go have drinks with guys in the business. What kind of a day did you have? I did okay. What do you mean you did okay? Sold 222 episodes. They're like, what? Because we were on a roll. We were just on a roll, It was a magical time.
Did you work with the acquisitions department at all? Or because like sharing information about your experiences, how did that work?
Well, I'll give you an example. There were times when Norman might be approached by some people, and they would say, we got this program, what do you think? And Norman would call me in the office, the two of us would sit there, and Norman would say, take a look at this, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And I would look at it and say, I think I can move this. And he'd say,
right.
Where do you think you can move it? And I said, well, I think I can do X, Y, Z, et cetera. And I think I could generate X number of dollars in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a great working relationship with Norman. And Norman would then say, okay, well, so it cost me Y to do the dubbing. If you can guarantee me X, we'll pull the trigger and do this. We'll pull the trigger and do this program. One of those programs was Dinosaur King. I still represent Dinosaur King.
That's amazing.
I've sold it 3 times to Netflix.
Are there sometimes shows that do well in other countries that didn't do well here necessarily, and then they want more seasons?
Yep. That happens from time to time. It does really well in this country and didn't do well there, so we never pulled the trigger. And then sometimes there were these crazy shows. I can't remember the name. There was this crazy show that Norman did. It was a Japanese series. Can't remember.
Oh, probably Ultimate Muscle. Is that what you're thinking of?
Ultimate Muscle.
Yep, I knew it.
Okay.
Because I've heard that they wanted more season.
And I'll give you this, and I have to leave.
Yeah, yes.
Ultimate Muscle. I go into London. I go to Turner headquarters to deal with Cartoon Network, the UK. And in the headquarters, they have 4 large ectochromes in the welcome room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's CNN, right? And there's one of the other big programs that was on Turner at the time, but definitely was CNN.
Okay.
Something else.
Some big deal stuff. Yeah.
Ultimate Muscle. And
what?
I just, what?
What?
What is this? And I go to see the buyer. Her name was Joe Sweetie. And I said, Joe, I couldn't help. Oh, she said, it's huge. It's huge here. Can we get more episodes? Can't help you. Can't get more.
That's so interesting. Okay, I will let you go, but thank you so much for your time.
Wow, that was so much amazing information. Thank you to Brian Lacey. I have so many more questions, but first of all, what an incredible memory he has of that time. He could teach a college course in distribution. I mean, my mind is a little blown. I'm really sad Steve was not here to experience this with me. But I'm so glad that you guys got to hear his insights and stories and anecdotes. And he's probably remembered more specifics than I think anyone we've spoken to. So thank you so much to Brian Lacey. once again, if you've enjoyed the show, it always helps us if you subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts specifically. Tell your friends. You can go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback or our regular website, 4kidsflashback.com, where there's links to all the different places you can listen to the show, the merch you can get with our logo and some other fun t-shirts and stuff. But we really, really appreciate you guys listening. I feel like I just got an education from Brian. So thank you guys. We appreciate you taking your time and hanging out here. And we will, to quote Steve, catch you next time. 4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, Tara here. If you are enjoying the 4Kids Flashback podcast, here is another podcast you will probably like. It's called the One Piece Podcast. They have been covering One Piece since 2009, so there are about 1 million episodes for you to listen to. Highly recommend it. They do all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, break down the shows, interview actors. You're gonna dig it. Go to onepiecepodcast.com or look them up wherever you hear podcasts. And you might even hear a familiar voice that sounds a lot like Steve Yurko. Check it out now. Thanks.